Here we are today at Abbey Park, Leicester's Premier Park, which is 1 mile to the north of the city centre. Looking here, we have the Abbey Grounds entrance, which is a stone arch with flanking walls and low turrets, dated 1931, which also joins onto the medieval walls of the park, which are from the 15th century. Moving along, we have the old Abbey Gatehouse and what's left of Cavendish House, which is the late 16th or 17th century house. Now, excavations that have been done here by Leicester University show that this site was the entrance to the Leicester Abbey through the gatehouse. From the 14th century, this was extended from a simple building to one with 4 corner towers, 5 large rooms, and unusual for the time, glazed windows. This was enlarged around about the mid-16th century to create a mansion for the Hastings family, using stone from the abbey following Henry VIII's disillusionment of the abbeys where they were destroyed. This was then sold to the Cavendish family, who extended this further in the 17th century. William Cavendish was one of the 8 commissioners for the disillusionment of the monasteries. Now, looking around, the house was actually destroyed by fire during the English Civil War, which was in 1645. Allegedly, this was set on fire by Charles I's troops, which happened after he had left. And moving forward to the front of the building, you can actually see the blackened window still from where that fire raged and the smoke that came from it. Now, here we have the Abbey Church, which was founded in 1143 and was one of the wealthiest Augustinian abbeys in the country. This would have been closed in 1538 when Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries and confiscated their land and possessions. Now, within 30 years of this closing, it was demolished and all the stone, lead and tile from it would have been sold off. Until 1922, no one actually knew where the abbey was. However, after Tutankhamun's tomb was found in Egypt, they started looking for where Cardinal Wolsey was kept. Now, during the Great Depression, to give work to locals, they were actually clearing the weeds from this overgrown site and uncovered buried foundations of the abbey's buildings, and there we can see a stone that was laid actually saying what this was and to respect the area because it would have been an area of silent prayer. Now, in 1934, the low walls that can be seen around today were marked out and various graves were found, but they didn't find the tomb that held Cardinal Wolsey. Now, walking up the 12th century Abbey Church, this is in fact built in the shape of a cross, with the arms of the cross running from north to south. The northern transepts would have been the Lady Chapel, which was dedicated to the Virgin Mary, and also by tradition this is where Cardinal Wolsey's tomb allegedly would have been. Now here we are walking towards the chapel where Cardinal Wolsey's tomb would have been. Cardinal Thomas Wolsey was the Lord Chancellor under Henry VIII, and he had more power than any other servant in history. His failure, however, to secure Henry VIII's divorce from Catherine of Aragon caused him to fall out of favour with him, and this of course he was trying to get this from the Pope. Now this divorce would have enabled Henry VIII to marry Anne Boleyn, and obviously wasn't got. There we have where his body or tomb would have been as a memorial. Now whilst returning from York and on his way to London, where no doubt he would have ended up in the Tower of London to face charges of treason, he became ill and he was stopped at the Abbey, where he died and was subsequently buried. His exact resting place remains unknown, and despite efforts to locate it, it's thought he was buried in the Lady Chapel, which we can actually see here, and I believe this again is from around about the early 20th century when this was built. So here we are walking to the rear of the chapel, and this would have been St Augustine's Chapel, which is in the south transept. Now the south side of the chapel would have had the cloisters walk. This was covered walkways with arches which would have faced into an open space in the middle of the abbey. Now sometimes this would have been used as a garden, and this would have been used for growing herbs and medicinal plants. Archaeological excavations of the cloisters dated this as being built around about 1180 and 1220. However, they also believe this was rebuilt again in the 14th century, as it showed under excavations as a floor of green glazed and inlaid towels in diagonals, which would have looked absolutely amazing at the time. As we walk through what would have been a doorway here, we are going into what is the dormitory area. Now this no doubt would have been where the occupants of the abbey would have been resting and taking prayer maybe before a good night's sleep. Nearby to this, there would have also been a chapter house. Now this would have been used for daily meetings of the abbot and the canons of the abbey, where they would have discussed matters affecting the community of the time and any confessions that the other people there might have had. We're now moving towards a sign information board which shows us where excavations have shown where an infirmary and a guest house would have been. The Abbey also welcomed guests. What you're looking at now is where the guest hall would have been, and in the 1920s excavations revealed a rectangular building with a large bay window. Now as we pan round we'll be able to see the actual mark of this bay window in a semicircle just coming up now. Now the guest hall, visitors would have obviously stayed here, and between 2008 and 2009 further excavations showed that the guest hall may have actually been on the first floor, and the bottom floor may have actually had toilets, which were stone-lined pits which discharged into the river, and the further rooms also within here had fireplaces, which was very unusual. Now we enter the warming room. Now this was the only place in the abbey that would have had a communal fire that was constantly lit. The monks obviously would warm themselves in here after hours in unheated cloisters or doing other work outside. Now this is one of the few heated areas. Others would have been the infirmary, the guest house and the kitchen. Now this is also close to the refectory where we're entering now, where the monks would have eaten their food. So the shared warmth from the warming room would also enter here. And also it is suspected that above the warming room there would have been on the first floor maybe a room containing deeds and other legal documents to protect them from damp. Now what we have here is a range of buildings with supports, which in the centre are shown here by the little square structures. This is believed to be cellars, which would have contained the storage of food such as flour, beans, wine and ale, which would have been used by the abbey. Also there's history of there being some offices or maybe even the abbot's lodgings a long time ago. What we're looking at now is from the east of the abbey. That's the grand topo of the ruins, and in this green area here is where the infirmary would have been from the excavations. Now behind the plants, which are to my right, is the actual medieval wall of the abbey that has remained, and walking along there we'll take a look. These have contained, from when Cavendish House was there, they have some of the military features that have been added and embellishing it over time, such as arrow slits and towers. One of the towers I'll stop at, and that'll actually show it's got an archway in the brickwork showing there where the drain would have been into the river from the abbey. So that's looking at least around about 500 years old. Now walking along here we can see there's obviously a bricked up doorway there. That's quite modern because it's not in keeping with it, but this is the turret that would have been built potentially from ruined stone from the abbey, and as we walk around we can take a look back, and that is the actual archway there that would have been the main drain from the abbey. And I believe that it's actually been shown from remnants of that the sort of diet that they would have eaten in medieval times. The medieval diet would of course included fish, meat, beans and bread, potentially with ale and of course some wine. Now walking along near the end of the wall is this turret, which of course isn't really a castle turret, it's a fake addition to the wall which was built later on once the abbey was actually demolished. Now looking at it you wouldn't believe it, but walking inside we can see here there's some brickwork on the floor and almost metal holding the doorways up. Now whether this is a later addition or was built when it was actually built in the 17th century I believe, we'll never know. But yes, it's quite impressive to look at this, to give it that sort of military factor, but never actually built for the defence of anything. So we're coming to the end of the video now. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll finish up with the beautiful bridge that links the two parks together. So thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, comment below. I hope everything's been correct factually, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. So, thank you.